Congressman, thank you so much for joining me. A little hike today, although we are out really just enjoying a beautiful day here. There's obviously so much going on. I think what's top of mind for most folks right now is what's happening in Texas. We see representatives having to flee all across the country, break quorum, make sure that Greg Abbott can't go forward with essentially what is stealing an election, stealing seats for Donald Trump, and they're doing it because they know how unpopular their agenda is. But at the same time, as Republicans are aware that they are incredibly unpopular, I think Democrats are realizing that now more than ever, we just want to see fighters in the party.
Yeah.
And that's what we're seeing out of Texas Democrats right now.
Yeah.
They are going forward, making sure that they are doing whatever it takes.
That's right.
And I think that we're starting to get around to the idea that breaking norms is okay. Do you think we're going to be able to carry that forward down to 2027, 2029? I think ahead about how much we'll have to fix that this administration is broken.
Yeah.
And it's going to take more than business as usual. Do you think we're going to feel comfortable with that as a party? Do you think this is a turning point right now?
Yeah, look, this whole gerrymander nightmare is an instructive example because one, we got to fight tough, hard, and two, we got to fight smart, and three, then we got to figure out after we stop this and get through it, how do we make sure it never happens again?
Yeah.
So how do we actually make enduring reforms? So look, most Americans had conditioned themselves to accept a decennial redistricting every decade, which is something like a bare knuckle rugby match, okay? Now the Republicans want to move to every 2 years political Hunger Games, where essentially they're able to take stock of exactly where the different voters are and then try to gerrymander the Democrats into oblivion.
Yeah.
And so Trump said, well, we're going to squeeze 5 more seats out of Texas. That's like Greg Casar's district.
Yeah.
They've targeted the head of the Progressive Caucus. That's Jasmine Crockett. That's Henry Cuellar. That's Lloyd Doggett. And so we're just not going to allow that to happen. And so the Texas Democrats have essentially exited the state to deny a quorum there. And without a quorum, they won't be able to proceed, although they're now saying they're going to declare their seats vacant, which they have no power to do. So that's going to be a fight in court. And then meantime, we've got, the governor of California, Newsom, the governor of New York, Hochul, saying we're going to fight fire with fire. And the whole party is behind them because there's nothing remotely moral about unilateral disarmament in the face of authoritarians. And, I just got back from a trip to Europe where we met people from Hungary who were describing how Orban had copied Republican tactics of gerrymandering in order to create a one-party state in Hungary. So, this goes right to the heart of whether or not we're going to have a democracy or not.
And I think that taking up the mantle of corruption right now with this Trump administration is the best message that we can deliver. As I'm going to let someone pass real quick. But I think in this moment, taking up the mantle of fighting back against corruption is so important for our party, especially as we are viewed by people who we need to desperately win, which is the apolitical folks who aren't paying attention to all the news and who see, Trump gets a jet from Qatar and we spend $1 billion refitting it so he can take it to his library after his presidency, won't even use it. And they say, well, all politicians are corrupt.
Yeah.
But we right now see Republicans not only wanting to pick their voters, make sure that they can take whatever corporate money they want. They don't
engage in voter suppression.
Do whatever it takes to make sure that they hold on to power. I just feel like we're viewed as feckless as Democrats. I think that
the party not in power is always seen that way. And I agree with that. So there's no solution to that other than victory. We got to be fighting every single day. And we're in the fight of our lives right now. But I do believe that it's not enough to say, well, we're going to restore the status quo ante. We're going to go back to where we were before. The fact is that redistricting sucked before this most extreme version that they're trying to shove down everybody's throats in Texas and then in Missouri and then in Ohio and then in Florida because they're just getting started, right? I've got legislation with Don Beyer from Virginia, which would give us independent redistricting commissions all over America and then require the drawing of multi-member districts and the use of ranked choice voting. This will give us something much closer to a proportional representation system, which is what most democracies on earth use. And so we don't have to be imbecilic about this and say, well, let's just go back to regular gerrymandering. Let's get rid of the whole thing. And in fairness to the Democrats, we've been fighting for this. This was in our For the People Act. It was the first plank that, my colleague...
Republicans have already voted against it.
Yeah, they've done everything they can to stop it. They thrive on gerrymandering, voter suppression, corporate dark money, insurrection, and coup. We understand that they have no fundamental commitment to democracy. So we start with that assumption. We are the democracy party. We're standing up for democracy. We're standing up for freedom. And I understand people are frustrated, but that's not a strategy to be frustrated. The strategy is to go out and fight. I mean, I just got back from Pennsylvania. We took 150 young people in our Democracy Summer Project to go work for Janelle Stelson. We supported her in the last round. She came within 1 point of defeating Scott Perry, who's an insurrectionist. We're back there knocking on doors, talking to people, engaged in canvassing. And then we had a town hall meeting rally with 400 people there in York, Pennsylvania. I mean, it was amazing. That's how we're going to be winning, by organizing all over the country. So I know it's easy for the pundits to get on TV and say, your party leadership sucks. Your party leadership is not giving us a message. Fine, you can say whatever you want, but we've got to be out there organizing, mobilizing.
And I feel like one of the best messages, of course, we have right now, mobilizing across different, political ideologies, is around the clearest class issue so far, maybe of this administration that's breaking through, which is with Jeffrey Epstein. Right? And Trump's just attempt to do whatever it takes to cover it up, to hide, to distract, and they're doing a really bad job of that. Of course, as it involves Ghislaine Maxwell, which I think, as we talk about this, it's important to point out that Trump is not just covering for himself. By shutting down this case, he effectively stopped any more investigation into any other, whether it just be billionaire or crook of any kind around that Epstein cabal. And now we're seeing him protect someone who we know is a criminal, who we know is an abuser, in Ghislaine Maxwell.
That's right.
There's no conspiracy around this, right?
No.
You don't have to make anything up. But when I see Democrats talking about this, sometimes I feel like we do a hard pivot on it, because there's so much that we want to talk about right now. We say, oh, well, Donald Trump has betrayed this promise, but look at the other promises he's betrayed. I think this is a standalone issue.
Yes.
We don't have to talk about anything else in conjunction with it.
1,000%.
It is bad enough that it does not need to be symbolic of anything. But what's going on with Ghislaine Maxwell is, I think, a little difficult to follow, considering how crazy and unprecedented it is. Can you give, through the looking glass, someone who understands this, obviously more than I do or most people would, what is the precedent for what has already taken place with Todd Blanche, moving her to a different prison, the deal that they struck, the temporary immunity for her to share some information? What is this? Is this something that would ever happen?
No, the whole thing is completely anomalous and bizarre, which reflects, as you're saying, the underlying circumstances of it. And I'm with you 1,000% on this. We don't have to be somehow defensive about the fact that we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein and Donald Trump and Ghislaine Maxwell. I mean, this is just classic right-wing exploitation and predatory activity against children and against people, where they think that the law doesn't apply to them and they can get away with whatever kind of dehumanizing action they want. And so we have always been the party that's demanding an absolute honest accounting of all of the sex abuse scandals, whether we're talking about the Catholic Church, we're talking about Michigan State, we're talking about Ohio State, we're talking about Jeffrey Epstein. We are the party that is trying to stop human trafficking and child sex abuse.
And last time that we discussed this, you brought up a really interesting point. The book that you referenced that I've been able to, and all the traveling I've been doing with Naomi Klein's Doppelganger, you talked about, this vacuum within the conservative movement that needs to be filled by these conspiracies, by these wild ideas, because they're not actually looking to address any of these things that they care about. They don't want to address systematic abuse, so they have to create, whether real or fake, the boogeyman that they're fighting against, and it works. Like it does work as a messaging strategy.
Well,
and so I feel like, of course, we have an authentic and real and actualized care about addressing these issues.
right.
But I just wonder if, in a time where, like, I don't know how much the facts of the case really matter on any issue, how much Democrats need to, like, start engaging in a little bit more conspiratorial speech, how much we need to appeal to the wandering mind of people who aren't necessarily engaged in politics all the time.
Yeah.
Or do you think kind of the,
Well, look,
I don't want to call it business as usual messaging works,
Yeah.
but do we need to stay in the same lane, or do we take a page out of their book?
The Washington Post had a front page story yesterday about a horrific child sex abuse scandal in a small town in Alabama that has completely turned the town upside down, as it's been discovered that there was actually a child sex abuse ring there. Okay, so the question is, whether Donald Trump and the elite of the Republican Party is going to continue to cover up for people like that or not. Now, it's not conspiracy theory when you're talking about documented facts.
Yes.
I mean, Maxwell's in prison for 20 years for participating in child sex abuse and in that conspiracy. She's also an accused perjurer. And nobody believes that her testimony will have any credibility at all, because obviously she's seeking a pardon from Donald Trump. But I think, it's the job of progressives to say to people on the right who are authentically freaked out about child sex abuse and the idea of a powerful ring of wealthy men like Trump and Epstein engaging in sex abuse, that there are laws that we can put in place and there are programs we can engage in to stop it. But Donald Trump has been dismantling all of the funding for anti-human trafficking at the State Department, at the Department of Justice, at the Department of Health and Human Services, at AID. They've been taking it apart. And that's not a coincidence, because they don't care about that. And they want people in their social position to have free reign with other people's children.
Yeah, and the line that Senator Ossoff delivered that I think perfectly encapsulates this so well is that, people saw Donald Trump as someone who would come in and break and take apart a rigged system, but really has just re-rigged it for himself. And I think a lot of people are coming to terms with that right now. One of them is your colleague, Marjorie Taylor Greene,
Yes.
who came out the other day and said that she's now realized that the Republican Party is not pro-women, it's not pro-worker, and she feels disaffected by it, which I don't know how she just now realized that.
Huh.
I don't know what took her so long.
I missed that speech, because I think I was traveling. I'll have to go back and look at that. Well, I mean, that's the total pathos of right-wing conspiracy theory MAGA-land, because they feed people little teeny bits of truth mixed in with all kinds of lies and conspiracy theories. And then one day you wake up and you realize that your savior is actually a false prophet who's just been doing everything in order to aggrandize himself and increase his own power and wealth. So I don't know. Marjorie Taylor Greene is a tough case. So I can't imagine she's a progressive at this point, but I'd love to see what she's saying.
But do you think this is just because of the Epstein issue, or do you think it's because this was the Trump administration, the first go around, was always able to fall back on, oh, well, we're being stymied by the deep state. There are people, in this government that they're the ones stopping us, and now they have no excuses. Like, there's no excuse for their failure. Do you think this is going to resonate with lots of issues across a broad spectrum? I saw Jesse Waters last night talking about tariffs and saying, it was like, well, Trump did just get started, give him time. Do you think we ever get to a place where, as like Trump said in the beginning of his term, it was like, well, there's some parts that are the Biden economy, there's some parts that are the Trump economy. Do you think that MAGA starts to have these realizations on a whole host of issues? Hey, buddy. Or
Well, I mean, that's an interesting point because the timing of the right-wing explosion over Epstein is interesting because it comes right after they threw 17 million people off of Medicaid health care. And Steve Bannon was warning all along that there are millions of MAGA people who depend on Medicaid. And so he's saying, you guys are attacking our voting base. Now, of course, they were not attacking the actual power base of MAGA and the Republican Party. That is, you know, the owners of the biggest businesses and the wealthiest people in the country, and Elon Musk and the Republican power elite. But he was saying, we depend on these people for votes. You can't, you know, strip away Medicaid funding from millions of people, strip away nutrition and SNAP benefits from millions of people without this boomerang against us. So it was a very awkward time for people on the right. And I don't think that they, you know, I don't think that they explicitly challenged Trump over it, but it created this kind of anxiety and unrest on the right. And I think that's what set up the conditions for the revolt over Epstein, because they're saying, all right, look, you never promised to throw 17 million people off their health care, but you did it. You did promise to release the Epstein files. You were telling us that this is what you were going to do. And he got everybody pulled into that agenda. And then suddenly, after they had 1,000 FBI agents pouring through all of the Epstein files and they found Trump's name,
to cross it off as much as they could,
presumably everywhere, you know, photographs, video, whatever, then that's when people said, wait a second, you know, have we been sold a complete bill of goods here? And of course, you know, those of us on the other side say, yeah, of course you've been sold a bill of goods. Donald Trump is a
not
con
paying
man.
attention.
I mean, he went bankrupt 6 times. To ask the people who went to Trump University or who've been pulled into any of his various frauds. I mean, he owes the state of New York hundreds of millions of dollars for misstating the value of his different properties. He's an adjudicated sex abuser in New York. Like, that should not be a strange concept for anybody. But I think the challenge for us on the progressive side is to say, look, why did people go to Donald Trump? Because the systems that we've got, the political and economic systems we've got, are not working for everybody. And so they are like sitting ducks for a charlatan like Donald Trump to come along and say, your real problem is Jeffrey Epstein and I'm going to release the files. Well, the reason why Jeffrey Epstein occurred to Donald Trump is because it was his best friend. And he knew what Jeffrey Epstein was up to. He may have been participating integrally in what was going on there. We'll find that out when we finally get the files going. But like a true criminal, Donald Trump always returns to the scene of the crime. He's been doing the same thing with January 6th. He incited a violent insurrection against the Union with Proud Boys and Oath Keepers and 3%ers and other extremists to surround his attempt at a political coup, to try to steal a presidential election where Joe Biden beat him by more than 7 million votes, 306 to 232, but he can't stop talking about it. And it's the same thing with Jeffrey Epstein. He keeps going back to the criminal activities that he was involved in.
When you're talking about the different ways that MAGA has been duped, I was thinking a lot about an issue that I consider to be apolitical to most people, but is obviously so political, which is the issue of free speech. Donald Trump, conservatives, they have been pretending that they are champions of this issue, that they really care about people being able to say whatever they want. Nothing could be further from the truth. And we just saw Trump pledge that he would be preventing disaster relief going to any state that had leadership critical of Israel. They've said that they've obviously, you know, we're throwing kids in prison and kidnapping them off the streets for op-eds they write. If you're a college, mine included, that wants to criticize, like wants to have professors criticizing Trump, whatever it may be, they are willing to silence you at all costs. Yet I still feel like, for some reason, the apolitical leaning of the free speech issue is one that conservatives win on. I don't feel like,
really,
as Democrats, we have any cultural issue in people's minds
Yeah.
when they think about what a liberal is, unfortunately, that we just win. When people
Yeah.
think about being able to say what they want,
Yeah.
they think, oh, well, that's a conservative idea,
Right.
which couldn't be further from the
No.
truth. And I just don't know how we start to build back the brand. And I was talking to Governor Newsom about this, that
Yeah.
it's not just about Democrats saying, okay, well, we have a brand that isn't where it needs to be. We also have to say, well, look at the Republican brand. Look at a guy like J.D. Vance. You were
Yeah.
just in Europe.
Yeah.
And leaders over there were talking about this fake crisis of censorship.
Yes.
When Vance, who went over to Munich just a few months ago, was talking about you shouldn't run away from your people. You should have to listen. You shouldn't censor. How do we, not just as progressives, reclaim that we're fighting for speech? We want people to have ideological differences. We're okay with a big tent.
Yeah.
At the same time as we show that Republicans want to just inflict their lifestyle upon you. They don't actually live it themselves.
Yes.
And change the narrative around this issue, because I feel like it is
Yeah.
just so ripe for us to win
Yeah.
as we rebuild the brands.
Look, I think a lot of this is a generational problem. Like maybe for your generation, the right wing got away with claiming that they were free speech victims and they were champions of free speech. Okay, I think people my age understand that the only reason we've got free speech in America is because the labor movement fought for it, the civil rights movement fought for it, the women's movement fought for it, the LGBTQ movement fought for it. It's always been the progressives and liberals standing up for free speech. It's always been the right wing trying to squelch it, and we've gone back to that historical baseline. Donald Trump every day is trying to sue ABC or CBS or NBC or 60 Minutes to
Or get someone
shut
fired,
them
or-
down,
yeah.
get somebody fired, and he's using the FCC, the communications arm of the government, the regulatory arm of the government, to shake these people down for money, saying you're not going to get your license approved if you don't settle with me. And he's doing the same thing to the colleges and the universities. That's all about free speech. When he says to Columbia or he says to Harvard, you do what I tell you to do. I want to take over your faculty hiring. I want to take over your student admissions. I want to take over your curriculum. And if not, I'm going to be bedeviling you, and I'm going to be harassing you and haranguing you. And
Do you think it lands the pushback though? Because what I worry about, obviously your alma mater has been a little bit better, more than a little bit better than mine on this. But I see in so much of the response online is like, well, why do we need to be giving Harvard money anyways? Why do we need to be giving Columbia?
we're talking about scientific research so we can cure cancer.
And that's why I've had, more than just the, no worries, more than just the complete capitulation to Trump, the failure of these institutions to take on a moment in which they can talk about why intellectualism is important when it is so under scrutiny in this time. How do we make sure that we are actually defining this fight on our own terms?
Yes.
Don't come through, you're all good. There's no worries. You're pretty popular around here, aren't you?
I mean, hey, I grew up here, These are my woods. Well, I mean, we're living like in the political dark ages right now. Science is under attack. Facts are under attack. Knowledge is under attack. Research is under attack. The truth is under attack. And free speech is under attack by Donald Trump and by the government. I mean, he literally tries to purge the fact of his two impeachments from a museum exhibit. They try to purge the words climate change from anywhere in government computers, online, any websites. They're trying to take that down. They're trying to completely rewrite the history of January 6th, rewrite the history of the 2020 election, rewrite the history of the Civil War. There are very fine people on both sides when there's an anti-Semitic riot in Charlottesville. It is the progressives who are standing up for history, who are standing up for facts, who are standing up for the truth. So they want to deny the existence of climate science. People around the world think we're absolutely lunatics about this. We've got to be organizing the countries of the world, the governments of the world, to be combating the climate crisis, to be dramatically reducing greenhouse gas emissions, to be moving to the renewable energy systems. And instead, these people want the whole country to stick our head in the sand. You shock me a little bit when you say that it's assumed, among people in your generation that, well, the right is on the side of free speech.
That's how people observe from a distance.
Yeah.
It's not true. We know that not to be true, but that's what they think.
I mean, look at Donald Trump going after the law firms in America, right?
But he picks good enemies. That's the biggest issue here. And they don't like to fight back. Like going after big universities, people don't like big universities.
Yeah.
Right? More broadly, apolitical folks who aren't really paying attention don't have a good view of universities. They don't have a good view of law firms. I don't know how they feel about Stephen Colbert necessarily. He's got a great late night show, but he picks good enemies, and then we don't talk about the importance of the things that he's going after.
But that's what free speech is. I mean, the universities
it's not for the people that you like, right?
Well, exactly. And
it's for the people you dislike. That's the speech you want to protect.
Right. I mean, I don't think we want to denominate Donald Trump a king so he can go around censoring the speech that people don't like. If you don't like somebody's speech, if you don't like what Harvard's doing, speak against it. Yeah. I did when I was at Harvard. Harvard was invested in apartheid South Africa, and we had thousands and thousands of students at protests demanding that Harvard get out. But we never went whining to the government to say the government should cut off scientific cancer research at Harvard or stop researching climate science, right? That was not our solution to it, and obviously that, quote, solution's got nothing to do with the problem. Yeah. So I've been proud of the fact that Harvard has been standing up, at least until this point, and I hope they don't buckle under. I think that the Columbia example goes to show you can't appease fascism, right?
Rupert Murdoch can't appease Donald Trump. He's getting sued. He's getting brought into a deposition. He helped make the guy president twice.
No, if you capitulate, you just make it worse. And it's you give the bully your lunch money on Monday, he's going to be back on Tuesday. Yeah. Right.
And in our version, not that I want to do too much criticism of our party, but I think it's important. I think you're one of the best, if not the best. Oh, they'll say the best. Why not? I'll give you the credit. The communicators in our party, because you just don't. I don't want to call it this, but like do the preamble shit. I feel like we have to qualify so much everything that we say. We do it around Doge. Oh, we need to address inefficiency. There is bloat. We do it around whatever we're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't want to say how do we just stop? We need to just stop. Why do you think Democrats feel so compelled to just cede a little bit of ground when I have never seen a Republican talk about Marjorie Taylor Greene and say, well, she's got some extreme views, but here is the thing that I agree. They just are all in all the time.
Yeah.
Why can't we just be all in?
Well, again, I mean, I don't have that much time to be watching the pundits on TV, and I know that given that the Democrats lost to Donald Trump in the popular vote in the Electoral College in 2024, there's some pundits who have never let up and have just said, your party is weak, your party's feckless, your party's ineffective. I mean, we beat Donald Trump by 2.5 million votes in 2016, we beat him by 7 million votes in 2020, and we're going to beat them again, and we're going to take back Congress next year.
And I know we're going to beat them again.
So you can either be on the side of the political forces that are organizing and mobilizing, or you can be a whiner from the sidelines. That's the way I feel about it, But I'm with you that we have to speak with moral and political clarity about what we stand for.
Yes, I completely agree. And I think that in this moment, it's tougher than ever to speak with courage. But, I feel like we are all, so many of us, just so tired at this point.
Yeah.
I always think about the different ways to describe the Trump administration, but it is exhausting. Yeah. It is embarrassing.
Yes.
And I'm glad that we get to spend a little time outside the office and have a fun little hike to talk about it. It's a nicer setting. What have you been doing to just relax a little bit in the moments that you can to unwind? I appreciate you taking me to your woods, your neck of the woods, but what have you been doing to just cut loose a little bit?
Yeah.
Mid so much trial, tribulation, constant drain of it all.
Yeah. Well, it's been a tough time for everybody, and we are in the fight of our lives, and people need to take care of themselves because, we're in this as, long distance warriors here. This is not the work of 2 weeks or 2 months or even 2 years. I mean, these people really want to have an authoritarian takeover of American society and all of our institutions. So, I've been deriving a lot of strength from reading about American history, and prior generations of democracy, freedom patriots who have faced odds at least as daunting and uphill as the ones we face today. I love Bob Moses, who founded the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee in Mississippi and went down there to register people to vote at a time of absolute Jim Crow lockdown oppression there. And I love reading about the Revolution and the Civil War and Reconstruction and Frederick Douglass. So I look to the past, but I also look to the future. I mean, you know, my whole campaign now, I have the luxury of coming from a very blue district in beautiful Montgomery County, Maryland. And so I raise millions of dollars and I spend no money on TV, radio, pollsters, consultants, any of that stuff. All of the money goes into a project called Democracy Summer, which is a school for young people, and it's around the country now. We have more than 1,000 young people participating this summer, and I put the money into swing districts. I mean, we've given away more than, I don't know, $2.5, $3 million already at this point. And, you know, we just got back from York, Pennsylvania, where we were with Janelle Stelson, who's going to topple Scott Perry, an insurrectionist who was plotting for the destruction of American democracy in 2020 with Donald Trump. So I derive hope from the struggle that we're in, from the campaign that we're in. And so it's, you know, nothing that any of us ever expected. This was not where we thought American history was going. But here's where we are. And we have the benefit of being able to wake up every day and going out to fight for everything that we believe in. And so...
And it has, you know, obviously, I wish there were different things animating so much political engagement and action from my generation. But, you know, obviously you grew up around government. You had family involvement. Your parents were quite active. What was the moment where it clicked for you that you knew this is what you wanted to do? Was it the present moment that you lived through? Was it the recent history around the fight for civil liberties across the country? Was it your passion for the Constitution and the broader history of this country? What was it that activated something in you that made you want to be a part of this fight? I know for me, unfortunately, it was Donald Trump. What was it for you?
Well, you know, I was a law professor, a professor of constitutional law for 25 years. And I basically have an academic temperament. I love reading and writing articles and books and being with young people and teaching about our Constitution and about the American democratic experiment. And but I always knew I had a kind of a political gene in me. I had a grandfather who was actually the first Jewish person ever elected to the Minnesota legislature. And I used to watch him and just kind of how he operated in life as a public person, as a lawyer. And it was all about service to people. And so I thought that, you know, this might be something I'd want to do one day. And you know, I loved being in academia and I loved writing, but at a certain point I began to feel a little bit fraudulent, like I was just putting ideas out into the world and I wasn't going to fight for them. And so in Maryland, we've got a part-time legislature. I ran for the Maryland State Senate while I was still a law professor. And I ran against a 32-year incumbent who was the president pro tem of the Maryland Senate. My favorite story is the local paper had an article about the race, quoting a pundit who said Raskin's chances of victory are considered impossible. And 9 months later, we got 67% of the vote. And the Washington Post had an article quoting a pundit who said Raskin's victory was inevitable. So I went from impossible to inevitable in 9 months because the pundits are never wrong. But I love to tell the young people in Democracy Summer that in politics, nothing's impossible. Nothing's inevitable. It's only possible through the democratic arts of education and organizing and mobilizing people for change. And so it has given me a lot of hope and inspiration to be in politics. When I was in the state Senate in Annapolis, I authored and led the fight for a lot of breakthrough legislation, including marriage equality, including abolition of the death penalty, including the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, the farm to schools legislation, benefit corporation law, which is now all over the world to allow companies to register as benefit corporations and to have a public purpose as well as a profit-making purpose. So, I saw government work.
Yeah.
I mean, I participated in that, and then I got elected to Congress the same night Donald Trump got elected president, and
mixed emotions.
Yeah. We have been in the fight of our lives to defend democracy, but what I don't like about that phrase is that it implies that democracy is like this static collection of rules and procedures, and democracy is always a project. It's an unfolding process, and it's always an unfinished draft. So, our democracy is not remotely perfect, and we got to keep moving forward. So we got to defend what we've got against Trump and his gang, and then we got to keep going. Well, for example, right now we've crossed from the Maryland side over to the DC side of Rock Creek Park. We've got the only national capital on planet Earth where the people aren't represented in their own legislature, right? So now the Democrats, when we had the gavel in the last two Congresses, we passed DC statehood on the House side. And I was the floor leader, and I got to get up and say, hey, I want to thank the 713,000 tax-paying draftable citizens of Washington who have a genuine political grievance but didn't come down and beat the daylights out of our police officers and try to overthrow the government. They did it the right way. They've petitioned for statehood, and we need statehood for people in Washington. We need statehood for people in Puerto Rico. We've got to keep the democratic experiment going.
Well, I think that, thinking back on that fight and thinking back on a $15 minimum wage that we weren't able to put together in a reconciliation package because of a Senate parliamentarian, I think would have the gerrymandering fight that, rightfully so, we are seeing Democratic governors across the country engage in fighting back against Donald Trump. Is it something we would have imagined 2 years ago? I don't even know. Right? I don't know if we would have thought that we'd be in this place. Do you think we'll be in a place where, the term I used last night, just very upset with the Bondi, I'm going after Obama in a new way, there's going to be new evidence that I'm going to make up. And that it took Pam Bondi less time to go after Barack Obama than it did Merrick Garland to begin prosecuting Donald Trump for an insurrection.
Yes.
I don't think this should be our constant view of governance, but
yes.
I would like to see Democrats govern with a vengeance,
yes.
right? With understanding the stakes. I don't want a Democratic president to come in and say, well, Kash Patel is the FBI director. He has his 10-year term. We do have to honor that.
Yes.
Oh, Emil Bove, it's a lifetime appointment. Well, we can't. We need to act as if we have just experienced the 10 years of Donald Trump that we have. And do you think that, I know I want us to be aspirational in what we're building going forward, but at the same time, do you think Democrats are going to come in and say, we have been telling you through the Trump administration, rightfully so, that he is breaking everything.
Yes.
We are going to fight like he broke everything.
Yes.
Because we needed healing the nation under Joe Biden, but I wish we had kind of fought back a little bit more.
I mean, you put your finger on the central moral and political dilemma of life under Trump that we've dealt with from the first moment this nightmare began, which is, do we try to uphold and maintain all of the standards and norms and values that we want to see in society, or do we actually engage in the bare-knuckle brawl that we need to engage in order to defeat them? And the gerrymander crisis is the perfect example of that. I mean, the states that have moved to independent redistricting panels are blue states. They're the ones that have said, let's try to move this to a more rational, fair process. There's no red states that have done that.
No.
But what that means is that is a form of modified unilateral disarmament where the right-wing forces are saying, we're going to gerrymander you into oblivion wherever we have the power, and you guys can go and try to do the right thing. Well, I just think the Democrats are convinced now that that is the wrong strategy.
Yes.
That, we will not become, cheaters and killers and liars the way that they are, but we will use every mechanism we've got to defeat them. And that is a moral imperative for us to do that. That's not just a tactical thing. We have an obligation to win this fight.
Yes.
And
I don't think that we've realized that or felt that way the whole time.
yeah, but I think that's where everybody is now. I don't know anybody who's saying, oh no, like, you know, let them go ahead and gerrymander us into nothingness in Texas, but it's just immoral for us to threaten the same thing in California, New York. On the contrary, it's immoral to allow them to cement in an artificial GOP majority because they're willing to use the tools that way, especially when we're the ones who've been trying to get rid of gerrymandering. And they've always opposed us on it.
Yeah, I think that we've come to the realization that power, more so than protecting norms, is what we have to do in a moment in which this is what's at stake. I know we said, you know, democracy is ever changing. It can't be the only word that we use, but the ability to make real and bold and structural change is the most important thing. That's what people want. This is what people want, it's what people need, and we need to take every measure possible to do so.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we got to talk about it on a little bit of a hike.
Me too. I mean, you know, the critical thing is when we're out campaigning to show people that when we're fighting for democracy, we're not fighting for an abstract value. We're fighting for all of the programmatic achievements of democracy too. The same people who are trying to suppress the vote and gerrymander all the districts are trying to take away Medicaid and Medicare and Social Security. They want to dismantle all of the advances that the democratic movements have made over the course of our history, including the Voting Rights Act, including the Civil Rights Act. All of it is being assaulted by Donald Trump and his movement.
Yeah, and I'm so glad that we have your voice in your fight, as always, standing up to it. I'm so glad you got to join me. This was a good time.
Thanks for coming out.
Every time we do an interview, maybe we should do it out here.
You're always welcome here, man.
I appreciate it.